Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the launch of Crannóg magazine, issue number 60, a milestone issue for us. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all. I can't believe I've done this. This is my 60th time doing this. I think I've aged on this platform over the years. Also tonight we're announcing the recipient of the inaugural Crannog bursary. You might have seen reference to it on social media or on the local press. The Crannog bursary is worth €1,500 to one contributor to each issue of Crannog, beginning with issue 60. The bursary is very generously sponsored by Marion Kilcoyne, generously and I would say altruistically as well. It's an extraordinarily generous thing for her to do. So we thank her for that. The name of the recipient will be announced at the end of the evening when all the readings are over. So don't go away. So we'll move on to the readings. I think we have 14 actually. Now we're down to 14 readers between fiction and poetry. And we'll have a short break then, maybe around halfway through. So the first reader is Alicia Byrne-Keane. And Alicia has been published in The Moth, in Banshee, The Stinging Fly, Acumen, and in the anthology Romance Options, Love Poems for Today. That was published by Daedalus Press. Her writing has been funded by Dublin City Council, Fingal County Council, and the Arts Council. And her debut collection is called Pretend Cartoon Strength, and that's published by Broken Sleep Books. So to read her poem, would you welcome Alicia Byrne-Keane.
Thanks so much. Sorry, I was hiding in the back. Thanks for the introduction. That was brilliant. Thank you. I'm just off a train. I was first, so that was like, I don't know. I'm glad I made it on time. Cool. This is my poem. It's called Spun. It's brilliant to be in Crannóg. I love it, and I've read it a lot, and I'm real happy. Anyway, I'm not sure I have the space to limn again the blue threads of the walk I was just on. I might run into a shopping list or a page of journaled fears. I felt a tug in my stomach by the streams, so much black water flashing between slabs of stone. Low-lying banks bright with moss, the land cut into platforms so you can see where the water has lain and worn. I suppose I'm examining the minutes since I met you. I suppose I'm not letting a single one out of my sight. It has given me a lot to write about and made me a boring dinner party guest. Here in the line of gorse by the road, hundreds of spiderwebs hung with rain. It's been drizzling, breath-like enough maybe to let nothing here fall between thorns. Thanks so much, everyone.
And thank you, Alicia, for that. Our next reader is Rachel Coventry. Rachel's poems have appeared in The Guardian, the Rialto, no less, The North, Stand, Southward, and The Moth. Her second collection is called The Detachable Heart, that was published by Salmon in 2022. And her monograph, and this is a mouthful, Heidegger and Poetry in the Digital Age, New Aesthetics and Technologies. And that will be published by Bloomsbury in December. So would you welcome, please, Rachel Coventry.
Thanks, Tony. The last time I was in Crannóg, Kevin Higgins was also in it, and we came to the launch together. It's his birthday on Saturday, or it would have been his birthday on Saturday, so I dedicate this to him. February passed. Her house was 3 slats of a pallet balanced between silt and thicket. She waited like a sleeping princess for some latchico to come along. He still had a war in his eyes, she hypnotized by those pretty explosions. He said he'd seen active service in Angola. What that meant was inchoate. What that meant was something rotted. The war burst out of him at decreasing intervals. She had no walls to hide behind, but she planted crocuses in the loam of it. Every year they detonated like a joke. How they laughed and laughed till their tears flowed.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I remember that night when Kevin was here. Yesterday was Kevin's birthday, I think, and there was a special over the edge held for him yesterday evening in the library. Our next reader is a fiction. Is David Butler. David's novel called City of Dis, which was published by New Ireland in 2015, was shortlisted for the Kerry Group Irish Novel of the Year. Ireland House brought out his second short story collection called The Fugitive in 2021. His literary prizes for the short story include the Maria Edgeworth, which he won twice, the Benedict Kiley, the Colm Tóibín, Chiplit Fest, ITT Redline, and the Fish International Award. So to read his story, would you welcome please David Butler.
Absolutely lovely to be back here. I think over the last 10 years I made 6 Crannogs, and I've been here 5 of those 6 times. I only missed one, unfortunately. It's lovely, absolutely lovely to be here. Okay, it's a story called The Fall. Sorry, just reading the first line. That year the weather was topsy-turvy. So we all know what year I'm talking about, don't we? Sorry. That year the weather was topsy-turvy. Weeks of drought. Then it said on the news that June had been the wettest since records began. Nana said the garden didn't know whether it was coming or going, and none of it would have mattered if only Oisín hadn't brought Darren Roach back with him. Cian trailed a good half-field behind them, too far to make out what Roach was muttering into Oisín's ear, his elbow on Oisín's shoulder, like they were lifelong buddies. Too far for them to be able to turn on him again, to chase him away. "Fuck off home, child," Roach had taunted, making a feint towards him with one fist pulled back. Then his brother repeated it. "Yeah, fuck off home, Cian." Oisín, who never used bad language. That's why it pushed such a hard lump into his throat, far more painful than the bruise from that morning. But he had to keep going, trailing after them. The days were huge and empty and endless, like the ache inside his stomach. It was yawning and empty, as if he was starving, but he wasn't even hungry. He slowed, pushed up the sleeve of his t-shirt, twisted the skin till he could see the bruise. Would it be like the bad of an apple underneath, crumbly and sickly sweet? He put his mouth around it and sucked. It tasted of salt. It wasn't as if the bruise hurt much anymore. What hurt so he could feel it inside him like an ache was that Oisín had taken this intruder up into the tree house, into their secret den. When he tried to follow them up, they turned his own ammo against him. They'd taken turns flinging used batteries down until a torch battery had struck him on the arm. And it wasn't as if he was a child either. He'd be 12 come September. He'd be starting secondary school. Okay, Oisín was 14 now. Last year his voice had broken. He'd shot up, got lanky, gawky, Nana called it. He wore longers, even in summer. Then he'd insisted on going to the Gaeltacht in Dingle. Oisín, who hated Irish. That's why June had been such a long, miserable month. It wasn't just the rain. Down in Nana's, there was nothing to do when Oisín wasn't there. The farm was just a stupid farm. When he was 7 and Oisin 9 or 10, their mam had run off to Galway. After that, their dad packed them off every summer out to Nana's. The old farm was about 20 minutes drive outside Tralee. There was no way you could walk it back home. It wasn't a working farm, not since their grandfather had died, and that was before Keane was born. A neighbour called McGowan paid rent so his cattle could graze the overgrown fields, and he could cut silage in giant black plastic rolls. But their dad told Nana he was only paying her pin money. "Why do we always have to go there?" Oisin moaned every single June. "It's boring." "Because the pair of you couldn't be trusted mooching around town all day with no one to keep an eye on you. Besides, it's no harm to keep in with the old dear, for fear she might take a notion and give the place away." He said that with a wink, to make a joke out of it. But it didn't feel like a joke. Oisin didn't smile back. He breathed loudly through his nose. "So how come he couldn't bring a friend?" "Ask Nana. I'm not stopping you." Oisin frowned at this, puzzled. He'd expected objections. But half the class were going to the Gaeltacht that year. It wasn't fair he couldn't go. Then their dad gave in on that one, too. That was why all through June, Keane couldn't wait for July. But then yesterday, Oisin showed up off the bus with Darren Roach, with his sly eyes and whispery sniggers. They both had these stupid haircuts, shaved at the back and sides right up above the ears, but long on top and flopping down over their foreheads. Nana, who was from Dublin originally, said they looked like a right pair of chuckaroos. They smirked at each other as if she was being funny. It would have been different if Keane could have had a friend out to stay. But his best friend in school was Sir Chaniríada. You couldn't ask a girl to stay over, though the idea gave him a woozy feeling. Their dad would make a big joke out of it, and Oisin would have called him a sissy. He was trailing behind them now because he was sure Oisin was going to show the stranger all their secret places, to betray them one after another, to laugh at them. Over the years, he and Oisin had transformed the farm into a country. The Kingdom of Asgard, it was called, after the boat, Oisin said, had run the guns for the Easter Rising. Except their Asgard was set 200 years ago. Its colours were black and red. When the Budlia filled up with butterflies, the Red Admirals were the ships of the Asgard fleet. The peacocks and tortoiseshells were from Nagria, which was constantly making war on Asgard. Already the pair ahead had kicked apart the miniature bridge he and Oisin had built over the ditch, which was really the mighty river Volta. Last summer they'd fought a pitched battle there, the toy soldiers lined up on either side, red and black for Asgard, purple and yellow for the Nagrians. They'd named each Asgard regiment and made flags for them. Oisin said that Keane's regiment couldn't be hussars because they didn't have horses, but they could be dragoons because dragoons travelled on horseback but fought on foot. They'd thrown batteries for artillery and used darts for musket fire, and the battle lasted a whole week. But now the bridge was kicked asunder, and the two were heading for the abandoned house, which was the ruined city of Inver. 3 years ago, they'd found a folded-up ordnance survey map of the farm up in Nana's attic, yellowing with black lines showing the lane and the fields and outhouses. It opened up to the size of a tablecloth. Over the months, they'd added colours, place names, crossed swords where battles had taken place. They filled up 4 copybooks they called the Asgard Chronicles. It was an entire history of Asgard, like you'd find in a museum or somewhere. With a plunging sense of dread, Keane remembered they kept map and copybooks in the war chest up in the treehouse. He ran at a lope till his side hurt and his breath came raw and shallow. Once he stopped to use his inhaler and to hold together the stitch in his side. Through wet eyes, the great oak wobbled into view. He paused again, one hand against the trunk, doubled over to get his breath back. Then he scrambled up the rough and ready rungs they'd hammered into the tree and pushed his torso up through the trapdoor. The war chest, an old trunk they'd also found in Nana's attic, stood where it always stood. He could even make out the chain with the combination padlock. He levered himself up onto the platform, crawled to the chest, fiddled with the lock with mutinous fingers. On the third attempt, it opened. There was something thrown in on top that shouldn't be in there. No way. His stomach turned a somersault. Though he'd never seen one, he knew what it was. A porn mag. Grown-up girls with big breasts. Not like the girls in his class, not like Circa nor Ada. But under the cardigans, the women teachers had them. Miss O'Dowd, who taught fourth class, was even called the top-heavy fraction. Sorry. But the picture the porn mag was open on was nothing like that. It showed the woman crawling across the floor. She was looking back over her shoulder, straight at the camera, and her rear end was up, and her bits were on show, and they were swollen and gaping and mud-coloured. He flung it from him, scrambled crab-like backwards, all but fell through the trapdoor. His hand groped behind for the rope underneath. His foot slipped from a rung. He swung out sideways. A branch barked his shin. Another slammed his jaw shut. Then he was mid-air. Had shock and shame made his fingers lose their grip? Or the hot tears which were blurring the world? Or could it be that he'd wanted to fall, indignation making him deliberately careless? Even as hip and spine and the back of his head slammed into the ground and he felt the thud rock up through his frame, he knew there would be just one moment of calm before his body was overwhelmed with the pain of it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, David, for that. Our next reader, we're back to poetry with our next reader. She is Anne Donlan, and Anne's debut poetry collection is called Witness. It was published in 2022 by Revival Press. Her work has appeared in several poetry journals, including Skylight 47, Drawn to the Light Press, Orbis, and Ropes Literary Journal. And she was the 2023 winner of the Allingham Poetry Competition. So would you welcome Anne Donlan.
Thanks, Tony. You forgot to say I was from Clare. Anyway. Okay, my poem is called Harvest. I wake to fog-stuffed orchard. Apple trees a rib cage. Their skeleton branches jig with an easy breeze. Sunlight veins breach cloud. Show windfalls strewn on crimson leaves. From my rooftop, a sudden rattle. Blackbird wrestles with a fallen apple. Peck, stab and gorge, till the gorge remains drop on the driveway gravel. I think of my father, his saving care for the crop. In the cool back cabin, on stilted timber crates, he stacked the lot, shielded from ravage of wind or bird for our winter eating. I'm not storing anything. Let wind have its way, sweeten the day for hungry beaks, give song a chance. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Anne. And our next reader is Stephen Shields. And Stephen writes both poetry and prose. And he has recently been published in Poetry Ireland Review, in the Stony Thursday book, the Rialto, and previously in Crannóg as well. Welcome, Stephen Shields.
Angst is a terrible thing, but it's the yeast of poetry, I reckon. But I have a slightly angsty sort of a character here called Blackbird. He was proud of his feathers, black, neat with a dicky bow. His beak darted in the hedge the day he organised a concert. No one came, not even the thrush, who at first had feigned interest. Blackbird sang a lone tune. Sometimes there are things you just have to do. Why, I do not know. Try my therapist. If you're on good terms, ask God. Me, I pour out music. It's something I find imperative.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Stephen. And our next reader is Beth O'Halloran. Beth is a visual artist and a writer. In 2023, her work was shortlisted for the Bridport Short Story Award, and she has won and been shortlisted for the Hennessy Award and the Bath Short Story Award. She's been published in both the US and in Ireland in publications including the Ireland House anthology called Tearing Stripes of Zebras, in Bloom, the Ohm Stone, and Brooklyn, Volume 1. Would you welcome, please, Beth O'Halloran.
Hi, thank you so much, Tony. Thank you, everybody. This story is a tribute to Amy Hempel. Do I have any Amy Hempel fans in the house? So you'd probably recognize there's her short story called The Cemetery Where Al Johnson Was Buried, and she starts the story with tell me things that it's okay for me to forget. And it was a story that Amy Hempel wrote in a workshop where she was asked to write about the thing that she, like the secret that most undid her sense of self. So I thought that was a good place to start. Just with a story that, yeah, anyway, I'll stop talking about it and just read the thing. So it's Tell Me Things. I've brought you some reasons to stay alive things, she begins, trying not to let her eyes glom onto his bandages. She's sitting on a vinyl chair, which she slides too quickly and too close to the metal frame of his bed, so her fingers get pinched. Wagging them, she pulls a big plastic box out of a bag. First up, some beauties from my son's rock collection. The box rattles as she levels it in the space between his knees and the edge of the bed. The box is divided into many small sections, giving each rock a frame. These are the ones he says get top shelf treatment. The tubes slow and stiffen his arms' movements like a puppet's. He's turning a sliver of geode in his fingers, placing it in front of one eye, while closing the other. Look at that, he says. Hard to believe it's of this earth. She nods, relieved that there is something for them to look at that is not his sliced up arms. How many times has she picked up a pebble and thought, this tiny thing will outlast us all, and the idea had shrunk her worries. His hospital gown is covered in a broken diamond pattern that looks like shiny things in cartoons. He's tapping a piece of what she thought was pink granite with his sallow fingers. He knows the proper name for it, but as soon as he says it, she forgets. Now he's lifting a long, thin crystal. It looks like an icicle. They've barely spoken since they shared joints on the college fire escape years ago. She doesn't know him well enough for this visit. Doesn't even know how far away to sit. Sorry, my eyesight's so bad and I'm squinting. Before he has time to study each rock, she says, I have more. And her hand dives back into the bag. Outside his window, there is a view of a giant beech tree with Halloween decorations dangling from the lowest branches. In the wind, the leaves flip from pale green to plum, which only makes her think of his bruises. She wishes she could open the window. Her mouth is blotting paper dry. She sees his plastic cup beside his bed with a bent straw in it. Are you thirsty? She asks. He's saying thank you, but I'm okay. Thank you for coming all this way, and sorry for scaring everyone and for not being able to give you even a drop of tea after your long drive. She hands him a small Tupperware container which contains a sprig of a pine-scented branch. There's a note written in a child's hand. Christmas 2016, branch from Christmas tree, crystal growing. I'm really not sure what this was. Maybe there was some salt crystals growing in it. But the thing I wanted to share with you, open it. Can you smell it? She asks as his, I'm sorry, I can't read. as he leans his face down. She listens to the sound of his breath and clings to it like a favorite song coming from a passing car. He closes his eyes. A pocket of Christmas, he says. 5 years on and still. Maybe it was the pine smell, but he's perked up a bit. And asks if she can help him shift the pillows so he can sit up more. Sorry, I have to blink. When they brought me here in the ambulance, they didn't put the siren on. I don't know why, because they were going fast. I could tell, because as I was lying there, I could see the blur from the skylight. Did you know they have skylights in ambulances? No, she did not. Everything was quiet once the medic lady stopped asking all those next of kin questions. I was lying back and saw only sky and trees. You know, the kind that look like they're reaching out for each other. And the ambulance's blue light on the branches as we passed under them. I thought about whoever it was who decided to add those windows and the kindness of that. It helped, you know. She nods, her throat going solid. She is busy in her bag again. When he sees a woebegone plant, he laughs a laugh that becomes a cough, the kind of cough when a smoker hasn't got a cigarette. A succulent, my favorite, he says. He turns the plant, which is not much bigger than his hand, a full 360 degrees, grins and says, Are you giving me this so I have to stick around and take care of it? Which reminds her that she was told, after having given a potted plant at a funeral. Oh, sorry, Kieran, can I get my friend Kieran to read that? I haven't got my glasses on, and would that be okay? Would that be okay? I'm so sorry, I just can't see. Kieran, would that be okay? I just can't see. Sorry. Thank you.
Sorry, so it's from.
Oh yes, sorry.
Okay.
I'll stick around.
Flower to a funeral. To never bring potted flowers to a funeral. Just cut flowers so the moment won't be stuck with something that reminds them day in and day out of how long it has been since their loved one died and how this plant can go on living when they didn't. Maybe stick around or the succulent gets it, she says, and he coughs again. Look, she says, the real thing I wanted to say to you is, he's looking at her in a please don't kind of a way. She glances again at the beech tree. There's a crepe paper skeleton with accordion limbs spinning. She's wondering why in God's name anyone put a decoration like that outside a rehab hospital. She continues, remember those paintings you did in college, the white ones? Sorry, paintings? I haven't, in years. I know, it's not about them or doing things and all that. It's that I wanted to tell you. It was the way you could always see more than the rest of us could. All the colours in the white. I never forget those paintings. Were they the ones we had to do, the crockery and crap? Yes, some exercise, but the point to this is, I know what you're trying to say, and thanks. Can I just finish? Her voice hot. His eyebrows lift, and she shifts her weight in the chair. I wanted you to know that every single time I look at the sky, or I'm on a plane looking down at the whole carpet of white, I think about you. And I see the yellows and purples and all that in the clouds. And it makes me think about how much I never said. And thank you. Now you look, he says, but doesn't say anything else after. There must be some roadworks nearby as men in hard hats pass the window. Are you in pain? She asks, her chin pointing at the wounds. Not right now. They're giving me the good stuff. I swear, it's worth it. They're not worried about, no, they know all about all that, of course. They just pushed the medication trolley out faster than I could reach for any of it. Warp speed. With all this, he makes an arc with his fingers towards the IV and monitor. I'm as well behaved as a show dog. You know, there's a guy I'm going to set you up with once you feel up to such things again. Yeah? Tell me about him. He's got a beard. Sounds perfect. She snorts. Honestly, you'd like him. I met him when we were both waiting for an interview. He kept moving his feet. He was shifting so much. I asked him if he was okay, and he said he was moving because he had a pebble in his shoe. And I asked him why he wasn't taking it out, and he said he put it there on purpose. He said he was really nervous about the interview, and so he put the pebble in because he knew he'd end up thinking about his sore foot instead of how nervous he was. He said he tried it before, and it had worked. A beard and a strategy. Sign me up. He's rolling a grain of soil from the plant between his thumb and forefinger. Now, I get to ask you how you're doing. It's only been a decade? More? You know, I'm okay. The kids, both kids, are great. You'd love them. I've cooked friends from scratch. His breath makes a sound again, which she wants to sew into her seams. But I nearly forgot the drawings, she says, her hand back in the bag. He opens his sketchbook. It's her son's, as if it's a manuscript. What am I looking at? Jungles? They're his terrariums. Jesus Christ, look at all the mushrooms. The details. I know, crazy good, aren't they? Fucking hell, I swear to you, these drawings. How old did you say he was again? Fucking hell, these drawings make me believe in God and all the mushrooms. He does them from his head. I swear, he's not looking at anything. She's looking out the window again in a series of too frequent glances. Wish all the mushrooms I took made my head work like this, he says. The room becomes briefly lit by a reflection from a large metal sheet which two workmen carry past the window. He closes the sketchbook, looks hard at her and adds, "You've driven a long way to come here." "Yeah, I needed you to know." "No, what exactly? It's not just to show me your Mary Poppins bag. You're pissed off with me, aren't you? Or is this one of your do-good things? I remember all your causes." He rolls his eyes and reaches for his cup. Jesus, that's a little below the belt, isn't it? I get to play the no bullshit card for quite some time now, I reckon. She considers standing up. Her hands roll into fists. "Well, yeah, I guess you do, and I guess I am pissed off, but it feels mean to say that to you." A shift to the chair, which is a cumbersome lump. Her legs are stuck to the plastic surface. She reaches for her bag again, but doesn't have anything left to pull out. She can't tell him how barren her intimate life has become since the divorce. He's making his lips into a thin line. "It's okay. If it helps, 110% of people who know me are pissed off at me, and you know how much I like it when people say 110%. Stop making me laugh. I'm busy being pissed off. I wanted to come here and remind you of the things. I have a whole list in my head. Cinnamon toast, hand-knitted things, rain on corrugated tin, knowing people who can see colours in white. But I'm so angry with you for nearly taking yourself and those parts of all the rest of us, the parts that we only get to be with you. I need you to be here so I can be the me I am with you." "That's pretty selfish." "I know." The workmen pass with empty arms. They wear clothes with many pockets. Gloves and wires are sticking out, and there are powdery white marks the size of fingerprints all over their legs and arms. These capable men with their work-heavy boots and ways to fix things. "I better head. The traffic will get bad. Plus, you look tired." "Yeah, I feel like death warmed up. Can I ask you a favour?" "Of course." "I know you don't smoke, but would you pretend you do and have a cigarette for me?" "That'll make me feel like crap." "I know." She gathers her things. One of her feet has fallen asleep from how awkwardly she had to sit in the semicircle chair. She stands up and stamps her numb foot. "Look at that," he says. "I'm your pebble." As she passes his window, she lets her fast walk break into a run, partly from relief of being out, and partly to punish him with the life coursing through her.
Thank you very much, Beth, and thanks to both of you indeed. It was a lovely moment at the end. The light actually is coming from here, the main light, so if you have difficulty reading, angling it towards the light might help. Yeah. Okay, our next reader is Sarah Mullen, and Sarah's poetry and short fiction have featured in Burning Bush 2, Boyne Berries, The Cabinet of Heed, Flare, Poet Head, Crowstep Journal, Visions International, Blaze Box, and The Journal. and in the anthologies A Thoroughly Good Blue and Tearing Stripes Off Zebras. She holds an MPhil in creative writing from the Oscar Wilde Centre in Trinity College. So would you welcome, please, Sarah Mullen.
Thanks, Tony. And thanks, Crannog, for having me back. Summer 76. In sunglasses and rolled up sleeves, the adults lounged, their conversation far away, humming with the bees. The back garden, a rampage of roses and ripe blackcurrants. You, marooned on the blue island of your comfort blanket, in a white sun hat too small for your head. Your first summer, my fourth, flaunting an orange bikini, a plastic basin for my pool. Called over for a photograph with you, the first baby ever handed to me to hold, the closest we ever were that day. Sunshine would wane, and the last blue shreds of your blanket fade and scatter. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next reader is Brian Gurley, and Brian's poems have been published in various magazines, including Acumen, Northwards Now, The Interpreter's House, The Honest Ulsterman, and Poetry Nottingham. So to read his poem, would you welcome Brian Gurley.
Thank you, Tony, for having me. And thanks for a delight to be in Crannóg. This poem is funny because I read this poem out to friends of mine. I work in Lisburn, and they said they'd never look at gardening ever again. So I've travelled down from Lisburn today, all the way just from work. Bit of drip. It's called yard work. I take the cast iron black shovel in one hand and the green plastic rake in the other, and gather up the dead leaves, the fallen twigs, the rain-rotted grass, in short, everything once natural and now browning, yellowing in differing states of decay. I take the rake, pile the cast-offs into the brown bin, the shark-finned brambles that I've hacked down to the base. It's done every year, but then returns without fail. I shovel up the upturned grass. The reedy tough tussocks lie decapitated. Next spring's flowers will be planted next week, and the revolution will proceed to its next stage. It's what must be done. The citizen's right and obligation as a member of the Republic of Humanity to overthrow and make anew. First sword, then ploughshare. The bare soil is open terrain. Today I have begun. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. We'll take a short break of about 10 minutes or so, and you can refresh your drinks, etc. And we'll see you back in about 10 minutes for a few more readers.
Okay, welcome back, folks. We're going to start with the second half. Very welcome back. We're going to start the second half. Hopefully, the end doesn't change. We'll start with our first poem of the second half. I used to get to shout and fight in a room once upon a time. I used to get paid for doing that once upon a time. Okay, our first reader of the second half is Emily Cullen. And Emily is the UNESCO Poet in Residence at the University of Limerick. Her third collection of poetry is called Conditional Perfect, and that was published by Durham Press in 2019. And it was included in the Irish Times roundup of the best new poetry of 2019. She is also a harper and a former director of Courts International Festival. So would you welcome Emily Cullen.
Lovely to be back, and congrats on the milestone of reaching 60 as well. Great achievement. This poem was born out of my frustration with my smartphone addiction, and then just my admiration for the word tallow and the sound of tallow, the lovely vowel sound, and it led me to research the tallow candle. So it's called Imagine. Imagine if we took time to make tallow, to follow our ancestors who rendered the fat of sheep for candles on days there was no paraffin, who melted it down, let suet simmer for 2 hours, then rolled it round a twine of wick, snipping the top about 4 inches. We might dwell more on the here and now, if we made tapers to glow, glimmer, in winter months, dark and fallow, if we took time to make tallow.
Thank you very much, Emily. And our next reader is Luke Morgan. Luke's second collection of poetry is called Beast, and it was published by Ireland House in 2022 and was described in the Irish Times as demonstrating a striking, energetic imagination. His debut collection, Honest Walls, was published in 2016. As well as a poet, he is also an award-winning filmmaker. Would you welcome please Luke Morgan.
Hello everybody, it's great to be back here and associated with Crannóg. Crannóg were the first literary journal to ever publish one of my poems well over 10 years ago. And I remember at the time, just the feeling of being legitimized by, by a journal with this esteem really made me consider the fact that I might be a writer. So here I am today, yet again having submitted work and having it been accepted by this beautiful community of writers, and it's great to share the space with you all here this evening. So thank you to Tony and to Ger and to Jarlath and everybody involved with Crannóg. This poem, Leeches, is inspired by, I was in Nepal recently, and we visited a leprosy hospital. Leeches. They fall from the sky here, we're told, climbing through trees to the leprosy hospital, where nobbled clay and painted blinds spell the miles from Galway like heat from cold. On our phones is a video by our cameraman, full of giddy horror at a gentle leech he finds near his heel. The picture wobbles as he tips salt onto its back. A few moments of calm, where you wonder if the salt thing is just a myth, before blood blooms from its lips, bursting slow like ink from a dam. Appalling all back home we share it with. A doctor gives us the tour. Patients smile and namaste. Press fists together for the Westerners, not caring why we're here, not knowing why we're here or caring. It's lunch hour and they're getting on with their day, demonstrating bald stumps when he refers to them in English, numb to our staring. We're here to make a film, raise vital funds. Half of us try and blend in by ditching shoes, which is how we were found by our famous leech. We'll gather our footage, swap our sons, spread awareness of this place, choose to believe all we regurgitate is speech.
Yeah, we were the first one to publish Luke way back. I think you were still in secondary school.
Yes, well over 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think I said that night, remember that name.
You've forgotten it already,
Okay, our next reader is Mary Melvin Gagan. Mary has 5 collections of poetry published. Her most recent one is called As Moon and Mother Collide, and they're all published with Salmon Poetry. That was published in 2018. Her work has been published in Poetry Ireland Review, The Moth, The Stinging Fly, Ciphers, The Stony Thursday Book, and The Sunday Times, and on Poems on the Dart, In 2023, she won the Kilmore Key International Poetry Prize, and she's a member of the Writers in Schools scheme with Poetry Ireland. So welcome, Mary Melvin.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and I'd love to thank the editors, Tony and Ger, Sandra and Jared. And it's such an honour to be back here in this physical panel. And the poem I wrote includes Harry Clark. And I was thinking about stained glass, how democratic it is, because all it needs is light and the communication is immediate. And disappointment turns to, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure why we're heading for St. Joseph's Church in Carrickmacross. Against the rain and wind, perhaps to light a candle. The front door is locked, no give. Around the back the same. Another twist, and we're inside. I'd almost forgotten all those Harry Clark stained glass windows and St. Pierre's, designed by Clark himself, waiting to be admired, devoured, like glistening jellies, as pristine and glorious as on the day almost a century ago. The artist had imagined the glass, seduced the pigment, inoculating our senses against. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. The next reader is Attractive Fahy. Attractive holds a Master's in Creative Writing from NUIG. In 2021, she won the Trócaire Poetry Ireland competition, and in 2019 won the Irish Times New Irish Writing. She was placed third in the Allingham Poetry Competition in 2023. She is a Pushcart and Best of the Web nominee. She has been shortlisted for Celta Poems for Patients in 2023. Also shortlisted for the Fish International Prize in 2022, Right by the Sea competition in 2021. She was also shortlisted for the Daedalus Press Mentoring Programme in 2021 and the Over the Edge New Writer of the Year in 2018. Her debut collection is called Dinner in the Fields. That was published by Fly on the Wall Poetry in 2020. And in 2022 she received an Agility Award from the Arts Council. So would you welcome these Attractive Fahy.
Very much, everybody. Thank you, Tony, and thank you to all the editors, your team, Charles and Sandra. It's wonderful to be in Crannóg, and it's a privilege to be in the 60th issue. And I don't get into Crannóg. So it's lovely to be here. My poem is called Falling After Me, Young Me. Under my bedroom skylight, I rest in night's slow pulse. Heavy eyes follow patterns, a glass table of stars, bare plough ladies. From my garden, a thud, the last of the apples falling. A rustle of leaves, they plummet through air, drop one by one, sometimes in twos, threes, bump off the compost bin, rattling down before a final plump onto the petals beneath. All night, one after another, they plunge. Half sleeping, I slip into dream. As a child, I didn't know life would be like this. Collecting apples after school, how tough to pull stems from a bow. Yet, in the full blush of their own slow ripening, they snap from their branch and let go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, attractive, lovely poem. And we've come to our last reader of the evening, and thank you for waiting. He is Luke Power. Luke has previously appeared in New Irish Writing, Ropes, Sonder, and previously in Crannóg as well. So would you welcome the last reader of the evening, Luke Power.
I suppose I just want to say thanks to Tony and everyone in Crannóg for having me again. I love the journal and I'm honoured to be on it. As Tony said, my name is Luke. I'm a writer living in Galway from Mayo, and this is a poem called The Minotaur. I once lost myself in my head on the regular for want of a firmer foundation to plant my mind. Now and again I cut the clue by which Theseus made it out. I came to know the Minotaur better than I should. Better than some, though I'll learn his name given time. You get tired of this. Submitting to a legendary monster grew old, and I drew nearer growing horns myself and taking his place, giving him my PPS number, a map and the keys to a fast car. He'd have made better use of them than me. He'd have got further. But the time came, and though I didn't slay the beast, I left his land and picked up the threads from where they lay, a little greyer than I was, but a little cuter also, a little bit more in the way of wiles, and I had a future, God damn it. I found God, and lost him, and sometimes I put him in the maze with the Minotaur, which had its advantages, next I was in there myself. I don't spend much time there anymore, though the Minotaur remembers my name and has the kettle on for me, should I ever visit. I crossed the water to a neighbouring island, having crafted wings which could withstand the heat. And I live there now. It has a population of 2, though if it didn't, I may be tempted by times to fly back, and I can still see the walls from where I lay. Perhaps God might join us here someday. Perhaps we could put him up in the spare room, though I suspect he has too much work to do in the maze for taking up residence on the coast. We'll wait. Here or there, we'll meet him again, standing in the last cul-de-sac, the ancient bull casting sand upwards and lowering his quivering head for the charge.
Thank you very much, Luke, and thank you to all the readers. Before you go, we have to move on to the business of the Crannog bursary. The bursary is awarded to one contributor to each issue of Crannog, beginning with issue 60. And it's a 2-step process. The first step, obviously, is being chosen for inclusion in Crannog. And then each contributor was asked to apply for the bursary. And it was quite a simple application process for the applicant. For us, it was not so simple. I do believe it was easier to pick the entire content of Crannog than to choose one recipient, because all the applicants were equally worthy, I think. So there was a lot of discussion over a number of weeks, and I think by yesterday we had it whittled down to 2 names, and we were getting into a panic. But we had more discussions, and finally, of course, we had to pick one person, and that person is the recipient of the Crannog bursary worth €1,500, and I have a check here for same. And the name on the check is payable to David Butler.
Well, drinks are on you.
It's
tremendous.
Yeah.
I want to get a loss for work.
Yeah. Well done.
So hopefully this will help get the words back.
Yeah, that's what it's for, yeah. Get the writing on.
Delighted with that. Thanks
Keep
very
it
much.
going.
And
Very
thanks
much.
for all.
So, thanks to everybody, thanks to all the readers read tonight, and indeed to all the contributors, all 45 contributors. And I always thank all the people who submitted, which is 800 or 900 submissions we get for each issue. And it's a lot of work going through all of those, but without a high number of submissions, or at least a high number of submissions, increases, I think, the quality of the final result. The more submissions you get, the higher the standard of the magazine, I think. So thanks to everybody who submitted. Thanks to the Crane, indeed, for hosting us once more. Thanks to Silent Cinema, who have been filming the proceedings, along with their little helpers. That will be up on YouTube shortly, on our YouTube channel, Crannóg Magazine. Thanks to my fellow editors, Ger and Jarlath down here, and to Ailbe, who has been helping us for just this evening. And the other editor, of course, is Sandy over in Canada, and Sandy sources the cover art for each issue of Crannóg. And the cover of issue 60 is by Linda Keown, who's a resident here in Galway. She has a studio, I think, down in Market Street. So thanks for that. And indeed, thanks to you, the audience, for making the launch of Crannóg 60 such a great night. It's always a good night, but I think this is a special night. And thank you all so much. And we'll see you in September, I think, is the next one. Well, thank you very much. We're going downstairs if you want to join us down there afterwards. There will be music up here about 9:30, I think. But we'll be downstairs if you want to join us down there for some chat. So thank you very much.